Y'all know about pod saves? Guess who they had on? The second best leftist live streamer in his best oversized fit here. Looking good.
Overall, the same exact problems that persisted in 2016 when the economy was seemingly very good, right? Especially as opposed to like the post-COVID economy and its recovery. People were still very frustrated with what was going on. The notion that in the wealthiest nation on earth, we have 600,000 people sleeping outside every night. The idea that we have the concept of medical bankruptcy is an insane.
These two issues might contribute to the Democrats' loss more than anything. Everyone knows Democrats are responsible for our major cities because major cities tend to be left-leaning and thereby they vote Democrats. And all of our major cities are crumbling and decaying. Filthy. Horrible, more and more homeless people every single year. And yeah, with regards to the medical bankruptcies, Democrats aren't even offering any real change when it comes to that. At least Republicans have the benefit of like gesturing at some greater economy or whatever. You know, Donald Trump, who has no plan for healthcare apart from making sure you die for lack of it, you know, he gestures at some change. Whereas with the Democrats, you know, you're getting effectively the same thing.
A base of angry people, and one of the two major parties is not even remotely interested in addressing that anger and trying to tell them what the solution to that anger actually is and what the real problem is.
But my stats. But my Pell Grants, but my charts that you need a bachelor's degree in statistics to understand that say that actually things are doing better. You mean politics means addressing people's feelings? You mean popularity? Man, the way Republicans act, they treat politics like it's just a popularity contest. Actual lines that I hear from liberals, by the way. I'm glad that Hasan is going on there doing this.
Whether it's because people didn't feel it or people didn't believe it or the way Democrats talk about policy is ineffective. Like, it didn't seem to matter in terms of how people viewed like the Democratic response to the economy, right? They were so angry about inflation. They were angry about a bunch of other issues, and it really didn't matter what Joe Biden said or what Kamala Harris said. They were held responsible. And I'm just wondering how you explain that, right? Like, it seems as though Joe Biden tried to listen to this exact critique and it didn't matter.
So yes and no.
Part of this is like you're doomed from the start kind of deal because Joe Biden was so incapable of expressing his positions that he famously lost the debate to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, like, yeah, low bar.
Well, I do agree. There are plenty of things that Joe Biden did, like beefing up the NLRB and letting the FTC rain hell upon these monopolies.
Which, again, no one talks about, so it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter if you do something. It only matters if you're able to make an effective campaign out of something.
Why is it that Donald Trump can meander around the country rambling, committing what in any other era would be, if not like campaign ending, like campaign harming, ridiculous statements, gaffes, sure. That he can basically be in like a strategic mess, but Kamala Harris has to hit every point exactly right. She
doesn't. That's the thing. You're holding yourself to a false expectation. She doesn't have to hit every point entirely right. She's on the wrong side of the paradigm. It's not about her hitting the points right. Like, Kamala Harris has entered into a battle of the bands rock and roll competition, and she showed up with no microphone and a violin. People are here to see rock and roll. She can hit, oh, why are people booing her? She's, played almost perfectly. Yeah, no one's here for violin, and they can't hear her. It's not an electric violin. It's acoustic. The room isn't meant to pick this up. She has a whole set of unused speakers behind her that are just sitting there. Like, she's playing the wrong game entirely. You bring a chessboard and you set up, the pieces, and then Kamala Harris shows up and she starts playing checkers and loses. And she's like, well, what the fuck? I played a perfect game of checkers.
I think we agree on a lot. I just don't believe that there is a version of the Joe Biden presidency that could have been more successful on legislative policy. I don't see that.
You're not going to appreciate what I'm about to say then.
Hit me.
Use the IRS and also the SEC and maybe even the FTC to investigate as to why Joe Manchin's brother owns a coal mine and whether there's a conflict of interest there. Investigate why Joe Manchin's daughter is selling pharmaceutical products to the state of
FDR
West Virginia,
politics.
when Joe Manchin is directly at odds with any sort of bill that passes that would lower the cost of pharmaceuticals.
So you want the president
Yes.
to politicize these agencies?
Yes.
And
They're already politicized. And the mythology that they haven't been is why the Democrats are losing right now. There is no. Do you think they'll be politicized under Republicans? Yes, they were already politicized then. The institution is already politicized.
use them to go after people.
Because you want to know why?
Tell me why. Hey, tell me why.
Because they're doing it at the behest of not only the American people, their interests.
People will be like, yeah, I'm an FDR liberal. What? Bully and like demand feasance from people in my party? That's like Hitler shit. Do you know what FDR did? Are you aware of what FDR had to do to get the kind of public mandate he had? People hated him.
But they're also, and this is probably...
Also, what's the consequence of politicizing the president's like regulatory and administrative powers? When the Republicans take over, they're going to do it? Where'd that line of thinking get us? Well, thank goodness. I mean, Joe Biden, or, then Kamala Harris, lost the election, but thankfully, because he was, abstinent in this use of power, the Republicans will be very, very moderate in their use of these organizations.
Going to frustrate everyone in this audience, but here's the thing that I get very frustrated about.
Wide range of listeners across a broad ideological spectrum.
Here's what really frustrates me.
What frustrates you?
The way the Democratic Party operates. They love norms. They love institutions. They love civility. They
Post has gotten kind of hostile over this one. It's very funny, the idea of like when coal mining magnates and shitty do-nothing senators threaten to ruin the lives of hundreds of millions of people by blocking necessary legislation. It's actually immoral to investigate obvious corruption that they engage in because it would be like mean.
Care about bipartisanship for the sake of bipartisanship, as though that is
There's
something
no
that
some do, some don't.
Yeah, sure. But for the most part, the broad communication coming out of the Democratic Party is that these are the things that they care about. These are the top line issues. We got to protect democracy. We got to preserve our institutions. The problem is the other side doesn't give a shit about that. So I think I want a Democratic Party that fights for me and others who are marginalized, other people that like desperately need help. And I know that the Republican Party is never going to do that. I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, well, at least the Republicans are kind of listening to what I have to say or are, communicating, channeling the anger.
Also, you could like do a really, really, really good job of running on this, right? Like if you were authentically anti-corruption, you could go, wow, what a coincidence, Manchin, big friend of petrol, of oil and gas, turns out that he's corrupt as shit and his hands in a bunch of, coal mining enterprises. What a coinky-dink. Thankfully, corruption like this will no longer be tolerated in our government, which works for the people, by the people. Like, just run with it. If you went after Joe Manchin for being a piece of shit and then didn't go to the media over it and just, like, let the Republicans fill the void with that narrative, then you'll lose on the narrative. Manchin's daughter raised EpiPen's prices by 1,000. Don't mention that, Benjamin. That's partisanship, to acknowledge that there is an oligarchy in this country where powerful people get away with doing whatever they want. You're telling me the family members of senators get preferential treatment? Are you politicizing politics?
Joe Biden, I am glad Joe Biden did the Inflation Reduction Act and an infrastructure bill and a gun bill.
No one cares.
And the CHIPS Act.
No one cares.
And a bunch of other stuff. I'm glad he was able to do all of those things. I'm glad that he was able to use his kind of like moderate brand, whatever, to kind of bring people in and get some stuff done.
But he didn't. Like he didn't. That you're comparing this against the false like juxtaposition where he was more radically populist and no one wanted to work with him. So
ultimately, we now know that political polarization is set in a way that never really existed in American history until the last couple of decades, right? I think that parties originally were more geopolitically focused on their immediate needs, like statewide needs. So you saw this dramatic shift, and now the Republican Party is...
Republicans live in terror of contradicting Donald Trump. They are worried about them running afoul or incurring his ire. I want a Democratic Party where a progressive populist president incurs that kind of fear in the politicians underneath him. I want Democratic House members and senators to adjust their rhetoric in order to not alienate themselves in the eyes of the hyper-popular leader.
Because you can make the Democratic Party look clownish and inconsistent and even silly and hyper-focused on whatever key issues there are, because, one, they rarely ever focus on universality in programs. Everything has to be means tested, which I think is both on the policy front and on the politics front, garbage. Focus on universal programs, because that way you can cut across every single group and you can disproportionately target marginalized populations. Black.
This is like the easiest sell in the universe. Everything that we know about politics suggests that across the board proposals are much more popular than means-tested ones. Democrats insist on means testing because they have brain damage. It's literally it. It's politics is about popularity, you idiots. Obviously it is. That's how you win an election, by being popular.
How do you think about the fact that in right-wing media right now, and like right-wing adjacent media, they are managing to be both the party of the wealthiest sort of oligarchs in the world and the kind of traditional moral set trying to impose a specific way of living on people, and anti-establishment kind of rebellious politics?
Because the Democrats are so bad at messaging that Republicans have filled the void, like entirely. Like Democrats are so uniquely weak and so uniquely bad at filling the media space with a narrative that Republicans have been allowed to do literally whatever they want with it. Donald Trump talks about, like, Donald Trump engages in more populist, like, anti-elite rhetoric than the Democrats can, because when the Democrats do it, all their consultants get nervous, and when Trump does it, all their consultants know that he's just lying.
Clearly, we need somebody.
People want a fighter.
They want a fighter. They want a fighter. And like,
and you can't fight for opportunity economy and $50,000 in tax credits for startups. That is not something to fight for. You need to be a fighter, and you need to fight for things that are universally good and that people want: healthcare, fixing the housing market, things like that.
Well, she did do that.
The problem with having this conversation with people like the Pod Save guys is that I genuinely don't think populism registers with him. Look at this. He was just like, yeah, she has to be a fighter. And then Hasan describes what she has to be a fighter on, and then he answers with, well, she did that. No, she didn't. She wasn't a fighter on any of these issues. She had a few means-tested policies, and she was incredibly weak in arguing for them. She also needs the mandate of the party behind her, not just her alone saying it. She needs like an entire unified front. They don't understand populism. I'm going to be honest with you guys. If you have to ask, well, what's the value of populism in a conversation about winning next time, I don't think you're going to be that populist. I think you have it or you don't. Liberalism's a brain disease, man. Like how you're never going to motivate people who think and act like this to wake up one day and go like, oh, wow, you're right. It is a popularity contest and I do have to care about messaging. You know, you're not that guy. You don't understand.
I want to make the Democratic Party look like, I want to make the Democratic Party make Olof Palme look like a fucking revisionist right-wing reactionary.
Okay.
That's what I want. I want trains.
I want trains.
I want better public transit.
Better transit. I want more. I want
socialized housing. Like,
okay.
But you're stopping.
I don't know, but like, what do you mean? We can't get into it. We can't get. We got out of time. We've gone so long.
What I'm saying is like,
like Hasan is spitting here, but it's not registering with this guy because in his head he's thinking, but the graphs, but the charts, but the studies showed a 2.3% increase in standard of living if people had only listened to Kamala Harris and accepted the $50,000 tax credit or whatever, like that, you know?
I am for building millions upon millions of houses everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how?
That's what I'm for.
Yeah, but no public-private partnership. Build it with federal, publicly funded employees, and build it as a mechanism to claw back the insane housing market prices, to lower them by force.
Okay,
that's what I think.
See, look, he's like fed up with it. He's like, okay, yeah, whatever, man. I mean, I know that, like, you know, I know they did that during the New Deal, and it literally brought us out of the Great Depression and led to the greatest era of prosperity and wealth equality in the history of the United States, and that everything got better. But like, okay, yeah, like whatever, play the socialist. Okay.
All right.
It seems like we pretty much watched the interview. I skipped the middle chunk, but if you want that, you'll have to watch their thing. Really, though, I'm glad this conversation is being had, and I genuinely hope that people in the consultancy space see this and they don't think of Hasan as like, oh, okay, he's like a frat boy with a big platform, whatever. I really hope they look at this and they build off of it, and or just they take something to heart, man. That would be my hope.